Good morning and welcome to another episode of Enterprise Morning on Enterprise TV. I'm Chinyere Abel.
And I am Henry EBBK.
Alright, we head straight into our main conversation for the morning. We'd also like to remind you that we are quite eager to hear from you. We have Enterprise TV segment across all social media platforms. You may subscribe, comment, like, and share. You may also log on to our website at www.enterprisetvnews.com. Our guests this morning are Barrister Evans Ofeli and Jimmy Abia, an attorney at law and public affairs on data. Good morning, sirs.
Good
Thank you.
morning,
Good morning.
gentlemen.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Now, today's conversation is one that raises every possible question, and so here we go. There are about 1 million Nigerians in forced labor. Now, that's according to figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS).
Yes, it says in the year 2022, 617,503 individuals were in forced labor in their current jobs.
Absolutely. The NBS disclosed this in its Nigeria Forced Labor Survey Report 2022, released on Thursday. The Bureau said the forced labor, as described in the International Labour Organization's Forced Labor Convention of 1930, referred to all work or service which is exacted from any person under the menace of any penalty for which the said person has not offered himself voluntarily.
Yes, the report said 5.2 out of every 1,000 individuals were in forced labor in their current jobs.
Right, and that forms our conversation this morning on the program Enterprise. Good morning, sir, once again.
Welcome
Good
once
morning.
more. Right.
So I'd love to begin my question with you, Jimmy Abia. The staggering figure in front of us is not something that should be taken lightly. But for the benefit of those who are watching and do not have an unabridged information as to what forced labor entails, can you give us an overview, a downright overview of what forced labor is, especially in Nigeria?
Yeah, forced labor would imply instances where people work without their consent in terms of being able to withdraw, because there are fundamentals for labor to be voluntary. There should be wages, there should be the terms of service should be defined, and then there would also be opportunity for the person to withdraw from work if he wills. But in terms of forced labor, these fundamentals are not in place. And once these fundamentals are not in place, you will find that mental element, intention, that consent to do that job is negated in such instances, and that is what is implied by forced labor.
All right, so Barrister Evans, let's talk about when we talk about forced labor in Nigeria, there are three people or a group that Nigerians often finger, and that is the Chinese, the Indians, and the Lebanese investors in Nigeria. Now, among the things that they do are as follows: low-cost labor, hazardous work without protection, breach of minimum wage law, and human right abuse are some of the norms. Now, the question is, they have taken advantage of our weak laws in Nigeria to do all of the things that they do. Now, the question is, if you have maybe an example of what you have seen as you have practiced, what do you think the law, or what are the weakness in the law that these people have taken advantage of?
Yeah, they're taking advantage of the fact that Nigerians are largely disempowered. Okay, um, if you are old in Nigeria, there is no place where there's provision for old people. Okay, in very civilized countries, once you are 65, the government takes care of your bills. Okay, in Nigeria, you have no such thing. In Nigeria, when you pass out from school, there's no hope of any job. In fact, your problem becomes worse once you graduate. Because under parentage, at least some persons, their parents are able to see them through school. But once they graduate, the parents will have to focus on the ones behind. Now, government have no provision for you once you graduate. They have what they call youth service,
Okay.
which they are supposed to, program in such a way that it's able to get the average Nigerian who is a graduate sustained at least for the next 5 years. don't have that. Okay, the unskilled laborers, there's no place for them. The ones who are artisans also have issues. Now, why the problem is both human and government,
Mm-hmm.
forced labor in between the investors, the very crafty investors who ascribe to these countries we have called,
Yes.
have taken advantage of the weakness of our government policy on sustenance of our citizens. Okay? Now, from birth, we have not even expanded forced labor enough.
Okay.
What we do is just, I mean, child labor is forced labor.
Exactly. True.
You understand?
Yeah.
That? Where a child is supposed to be in school, hawking groundnut.
Okay, gone out, yeah.
Now, that is not a child's desire.
Mm.
Nobody is born to embrace hawking at the age of 8 and 9. And then the person will come and maybe tell you that he or she enjoys being on the traffic when he's supposed to be in school, just because he wants to sell granite. Sometimes if you put a cost
The total
of
cost.
what they have, the total cost of what they have, it's not up to 4,000, 5,000.
Exactly, true.
So that is forced labor. People are not empowered. And once people are not empowered, investors that will come, they look at the way you treat your people. And what they do is to just adopt the same way or devalue them the more. If you look at the Child Right Act, you see the provisions of law, all the provisions of law to protect the Nigerian child. None of them is taken serious. When was the last time the Nigerian government organized a conference to look into the provisions of the Child Right Act for the purposes of raising a sound child in the context of Nigeria? When was the last time? When was the last time the government organized policy on public health care for maternal mortality rates and all that, and child mortality rates? You understand? So these are basic issues that will produce healthy citizens, competitive citizens. Okay, but you don't have all that. The only people who are taking care of are maybe the middle class, sub-middle class, who are able to earn money, and what government is supposed to do, they spend the entire money on that. You understand? Look at our public primary schools. Can you take your child to a public primary school? If the government have taken care of the public primary schools proper, the money you spend on a private school just to get your child to be able to read the alphabets, the money you spend, by the time you calculate it, you will discover that perhaps it's about a year of your salary cost.
Very true.
Just one child. Then multiply that by the number of children. So the summary of it is that the companies, when they enter, they do what you call environmental analysis. They look at, first of all, they see that your minimum wage is
it's not
30,000. Then they convert it to their own currency. They see that you are not a serious human being. So what the next thing they do is to go to the urban area and see the level of, you see, hazards, you work. If you walk somewhere and you get injured, there is no package, nothing. And the company will get away with it.
Very true.
So there must be serious advocacy on that area, on labor and industrial relations in Nigeria. We have a big problem to solve there.
All right.
And this government must do something about it.
Very true.
Thank you so much, Barrister Evans. Let me draw your attention, Barrister Jimmy, to what the poverty index rate stipulates as of 2023. So I'll just take this read. The poverty rate is estimated to have reached 38.9% in 2023, with an estimated 87 million Nigerians living below the poverty line. Now, obviously, this has, deeply entrenched the unregulated informal sector. Just like Barrister Evans rightly adduced, how these companies come in and no regulations, our laws are weakened. But even before we get to the part that our laws are weakened, what are the laws? What does the Nigerian legal system underpin in terms of protecting the rights of its workers?
Okay, basically, the major law in terms of rights of workers is the Labor Act. Now, however, there are other laws. There's the Employee Compensation Act, which also provides for situations where an employee gets injured within the time of work. Then there are also other laws like the Child Rights Act, which also makes provisions for children, in terms of circumstances where children should not work, and then also the rights of the child, to education and all of that. So these are laws that relate to work and relate to the rights of workers. Of course, there are others, like the Trade Unions Act, which deals with, the rights of trade unions, to enforce, the rights of workers, when they come together in groups. So there are these laws. But I think the major issue with Nigeria as a country is that there has not been an effective enforcement system in place, which would ensure that some of these things, are enforced. Of course, there's also the Pensions Act, which also relates to workers. A lot of these laws are there, in our books, but you see that there's not a system of effective enforcement and implementation of these laws. And this is partly what makes the situation of workers in Nigeria highly precarious, because then also I want to also mention this because it also relates to what we're talking about, the anti-trafficking laws, which is also something that relates to forced labor.
Okay.
It may not exactly be, a labor law in description, but it also relates to forced labor, because when you traffic people and put them in forced labor, you find out that their rights are exploited within those situations. So these are laws, but the problem is that there's no effective enforcement, especially by government agencies.
All right, so let's take a look at promises and ask ourselves if such promises will be kept at the end of the day. In 2021, the Chinese counselor, Mr. Li Zuda, who is, of course, the cultural counselor to the Chinese embassy in Nigeria, visited President Muhammad Buhari and promised that the Chinese government would work tenaciously hard to end slavery, labor slavery in Nigeria. And from 2021 till today, I don't know, do you think that the Chinese government and its contemporaries are doing enough in ensuring that that is ended?
Well, I thought you were going to ask when he said, when my colleague said, I'll come to your question, said enforcement is the issue. I thought you were going to ask why. But let me answer the question. Let me answer the question you have now. You see, the way your government, structure its policy goes a long way to determine the quality of industrial relations we are going to have in the country. Okay? Now, if you employ an American, whether here or there, there is a level, you cannot pay him less than a particular amount of money. You understand? Which is about $25 per hour, thereabouts. You cannot, by virtue of legislation. And the citizen himself is aware. You understand? The citizen is aware.
That's his take home.
Yes, so that if you draw him into an agreement that falls short of that, he will walk away, will tell you, you understand? He might even report you. You understand? So, first is the knowledge base of the populace who are in forced labor or who are out of it. The knowledge base, they are not even aware that what you are doing is servitude. Contrary to chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, it said nobody shall be put in a situation, a dehumanizing situation of that nature. You understand? So you don't even know as a person. So the level of awareness is not there. Most time, the weight of poverty, some people might even see that take home as an opportunity at all. You hear that statement at all? Yes, is the
is the survival anthem of the Nigerian citizen. And the truth is this: a human being, human capital, once your life is reduced to the point where you need to grab anything you see to survive, and you are in that situation for 20 years, it will take only the Almighty to bring you to a level where you can think proper. Because the way God created humans, He created humans in a way that your life is not the essence of your life. You are supposed to, the Harry Maslow theory of need, you are supposed to move from, first of all, you have the basic, which is food, shelter, clothing. That is the basics from the hierarchy of needs. From there, you move to another stage. From there, you move to another stage. You get to the stage where you are now looking back at society, seeing the wrongs, and you are deploying knowledge, resources, and all that to help society come out. That is how everybody is supposed to aspire to. But there are people who have been in certain position for so long that you are not. I mean, look at some of the civil servants. The reason they steal is very clear. When you have 30,000 as your basics, your minimum wage, and by the time you put every other thing, you're not able to go back home. And we're not the kind of country where some people, when they have 2 children, they see themselves like they have no children. Because to them, they should have 5, 4, 6. In fact, in my own language, they will say, Ofu Fadema. What it means is that one thing, anywhere, under our own cultural context, is not good. Some culture, they've developed other advanced cliche. They may even say 2 is not good. So people bear children in the way they do. And these children, first of all, they are disempowered. The children they are giving birth to are born into that disempowerment. So you see it's both human condition and the government. But what I think the government should do here is to look at these causes. You understand? When a foreign investor is coming in, the foreign investor should have, even though we have it in the law, but they are not conscious of it, there should be a benchmark. You understand? First of all, as you take away that minimum wage from that thing they have there, listen to labor. They're supposed to do that at Ireland. They're supposed to do that in May 1st, or they have a conversation with labor this thing by 1st of May. But they should take it away from there first, because it is that see finish. That is why investors are treating us this way. If they take it out from there, the investors are saying that, then they now make proper laws, upgrade our laws to the point where you enforce pension. You enforce the laws that relate to hazards and injury. Enforce. There's a 5% that they deduct from, that's government workers, okay? When they are in that condition, they use that. But not too long ago, someone was involved in embezzling all the money contributed. So this government must look at the human capital. You cannot have a safe country when your focus is not human capital. You will have kidnapping, you have insurgency, you have everything. Because your focus is not human capital. And human beings must channel their energy to something. If it's not productivity, they will channel it to fighting society.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Evans. Professor Jimmy, I want you to speak to the impact of forced labor. I love that Professor Evans talked about our cultural underpinnings and how it affects or impacts our output in terms of forced labor. We'll speak to the impact on families. Speaking of work-life balance, you see that some fathers will have to spend longer hours at work, and then when they return, they get really exhausted. They're not emotionally available to their children. I've been in that space where you just get home as a mother, and then your kids come to you, let me, I think I'm tired, I'm sleep. So you don't even know what's going on in the lives of your children. Talk to us about how this impacts work-life balance.
Of course, it affects a lot, both in terms of productivity and also within the family circles. because when people, I'll take it back to that of children, child labor. When children are out there, trying to fend for their needs, they are not able to get education. So, and a society where you do not train, you do not educate the children will be a society that is doomed, that its future is doomed. So that is one for children who are not able to go to school. Then you also have social vices, which also are created from this, because as the children grow up, they find that they are on the streets. They know everything that happens on the street. They learn how to take drugs and some other things. So that's also an implication, something that also affects the society, adversely. Then there's also the issue of productivity, where you force people to work. They cannot give all their best to that work. So you have dwindling productivity within that economy. Yeah, it is something that the people who are into this forced labor, who employ people into forced labor, may not take cognizance of, within their small microeconomic centers, but within the bigger macroeconomic effect on the economy, you find that it has a huge effect, because productivity declines, companies eventually die, because companies, there's something called sustainability. So you may have some form of productivity within the short term, but in the long term, the sustainability is not there. So eventually, companies and enterprises that operate this way would end up dying. Then there's also the effect where you also have, because forced labor is in very many ways. There are several ways. So you have instances where people get injured at work and they are not able to be taken care of, or they get sick. They work, they get sick, and there's no form of care for them, or they get old and there's no form of care. Now, putting more strain on people who are working, because those people become dependent on those who are still working, maybe relations, family members who are still working. So even the little which the person who is still working within the family earns, still goes into the care, the health care, and other needs of this other person who can no longer work. So it's a multifarious, it has multifarious effects on the economy, and that is why it is really something that I think Nigeria should, in every country, and in particular Nigeria, should actually be discussing seriously and finding ways out of such things.
Yeah, Barrister, your last thought in 30 seconds.
Well, the solution is what, like he said, the solution is that we must have basic standards for humans. First of all, the government should, as much as possible, restore education, proper education for the Nigerian citizens. Because you see that 30,000 naira minimum wage they offer us, it goes nowhere, because the system depletes it. The system takes it back, because if the schools are not proper for my children, I'm not able to expend that money on their welfare, other than to take it back to fix what government ought to have fixed, for which they've collected tax from that same money.
True.
And at the end of the day, what you have is that the government have breached the social contract theory, where once a government exists, it is expected that once the citizens contribute their quota, which is tax, VTH, whatever kind of tax, in response to that, government corresponding obligation is to ensure that certain basic amenities of life is kept accordingly. Just like yesterday, we're talking about the reversal of the increase in the tariff of electricity.
Yes.
You understand? Government says it's going to cost them so trillion to reverse it. And I said, let it cost them, let them go and pay. They must, at every point in time, understand that there's a social contract between the citizens and the government.
Themselves.
And Nigeria has not failed. What has failed is the social contract. And it is a government that is in breach of that social contract. So they must look inward and come up with the right kind of strategy. All this one that the president is assembling economic teams. You can do that for 1 million years. The country will not change. You know why? Because they are profiling intellectual solutions into the plight of the country to see how they can put the country together. And when you listen to them in their meeting, they were talking about GDP, equilibrium, demand and supply. Those are the things they are talking about. And they are getting it wrong. They can never get it right talking about those things. You must go back to the basics. What is it that government ought to do that government have never done the way it ought to do it? It's not intellectual economics. It's basics. You see that the schools are run down. Think about what are the factors that drain money from our citizens. These things are inevitable. They must do it. So look at how you can bring intervention to those things. Once the citizens have disposable income, once they have disposable income, they will not be fighting you, government. When you drive past their homes, you hear music playing everywhere, you see party everywhere.
Exactly.
The people will forget about whether you exist as a government once they have disposable income. But as long as they don't have disposable income, they don't have healthcare, they don't have social amenities, they don't have light, they don't have public healthcare, they will come against you. If they can't come against you, they will go in cluster, form groups and start to kidnap people. If they don't do that, they will go and turn themselves into bandits and start to kill people and threaten people.
Just to survive.
So if government, anywhere you find different cadre of criminality, because in Nigeria now, even before now, there was no law at all in Nigeria on kidnapping. No law before now. There was none on terrorism. These things, we don't know anything about them in the 80s, from the 80s. But now, we have to enact laws, place those criminal acts on serious offenses to ensure that their penalty is death. So we are doing all this to save society. But what government is not doing is to find out what is actually wrong. They assemble economic teams and they call the Dango channel. They start to talk about how the economy can be turning off. They cannot get it right.
Very true.
On a lighter note, I think we're putting up Bertha Evans and Bertha Jimmy Abia for the position of president and vice president. Thank you so much, Jimmy Abia and Bertha Evans.
Welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen. Yes.
Henry?
Yes, I think on a light mood, actually, we're asking ourselves, where is NLC in all of this when they are possibly preoccupied doing Labour Party?
You can say it again. And that's the size of our offering today. We appreciate you, our viewers, for always tuning in. Remember, you may subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us all across our social media platforms at Enterprise TV7. And visit our website at www.enterprisetv.com. I'm Chinyere.
And I am Henry Igwebike. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye from us.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.